From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Sweeney Gray. After 18 hours of debate and discord with rubber bullets and tear gas filling the air outside, Argentina's lower house has approved the budget for 2019. The proposed budget was passed with 138 votes in favor and 103 against. Tens of thousands had protested outside Congress against the budget. They said it involves huge cuts and was imposed by the International Monetary Fund. The bill will now go to the Senate for debate, and a vote is scheduled on it for next month.
138 have been affirmative, 103 were negative, and there were 8 abstentions.
The protests were met with a fierce response from the police. At least 31 demonstrators were arrested. Telesur's own journalists were caught up in the violence, and a camera person was struck by a rubber bullet.
Amid what has been called a brutal suppression, and in spite of strong opposition from various groups, the officialism achieved quorum to be in the budget adjustment issued by the IMF.
If this budget is implemented, what will prevail is poverty, exclusion, social inequality, closing of hospitals. That is why we tell the politicians, you weren't elected to surrender. You have to rise up, because the working people are on the streets demanding an end to repression. We are asking for this budget adjustment to be struck down.
Just like the darkest time in Argentina, the police force beat up citizens who were peacefully demonstrating. They tried to infiltrate political and social movements and hold them accountable for the rioting.
The police and intelligence services are trying to deny the people their right to protest in front of the Congress. It doesn't matter who's presiding over this session today.
Analysts warn that with the budgetary allocation to pay the interest of foreign debt, Macri's dominance over the most vulnerable will only get worse next year.
The main thing is that they are approving a budget that goes against Argentine people. It is a 400 billion cut that will negatively affect healthcare, education, workers' salary, public works, and all this will result in more unemployment.
Amid massive layoffs and extreme rate hikes, this budget cut proposed by the Macri's government will only serve to deepen discontent among Argentinians.
There is an exponential growth in the payment of foreign debt interests. There is also concern about the peso devaluation and the flight of capital. This is why it is important to protest, because even if the National Congress manages to approve the proposed fiscal measures, it will be a political defeat because the majority of the country is opposed to that budget.
Despite the bullets and the tear gas, Argentinians will continue to take action on the outskirts of the Congress, because they know that if the budget becomes law, the impact on society will be devastating.
Most of those arrested during the protests have now been released. They walked free in the early hours of the morning. They said their detention was targeted persecution orchestrated by plainclothes policemen who infiltrated the crowd. Demonstrators in Chile have also been suppressed as they demanded the government eliminate the pension system inherited from the military dictatorship. Police detained the leader and spokesperson of the social movement opposing the system, Luis Messina. Several protests have been reported around the country as the president, Sebastián Pinera, hopes to pass a system of reforms that would affect workers. A hearing on Julian Assange's case against the Ecuadorean state has been suspended. Our correspondent, Denise Herrera, is outside the court in Quito.
Hello, we are outside the Judiciary Council in Quito, where the hearing against the government of Ecuador has been suspended. The judge has decided that they need a special translator that can communicate Julian Assange with the defense team of the government of Ecuador and also with his defense team. We should remember WikiLeaks stressed that this action comes 7 months after Ecuador threatened to withdraw the protection and has cut off the access to the outside world. Julian Assange and his defense team said the government of Ecuador violating his fundamental right of freedom. So now the defense team of Julian Assange and the defense team of the government of Ecuador have to wait the decision of the judge and when the hearing will resume. So it's all for now. Back to you at the studio.
And in Brazil, as the campaign comes to an end, the presidential candidate, Fernando Haddad, is expressing confidence ahead of Sunday's polls. Thousands of supporters rallied for the Workers' Party candidate in Sao Paulo, chanting Haddad yes. Haddad sent a message to his political rival. He says in the end, the people will have the final say. So he's not fazed by the latest polls showing that Bolsonaro could clinch victory.
He will discover that today it is probable, but tomorrow it will only be possible. He will discover on Saturday that things have heated up, trouble is brewing, and on Sunday he will discover that he lost.
If Bolsonaro wins, I have a lot more to lose. All of us women, everyone. All minorities will lose if Bolsonaro wins. I am here for democracy.
Jair Bolsonaro and Fernando Haddad, they are two very different candidates with equally divergent proposals for the education sector. So what are Haddad and Bolsonaro's policies? Here's our special series, Bolsonaro or Haddad, two opposing visions for Brazil.
Fiscal adjustment is part and parcel of Brazil's current economic situation. The Senate approved an austerity package to freeze social spending for 20 years. Jair Bolsonaro, a sitting member of parliament, approved that measure, while his political rival, Fernando Haddad, strongly opposed it. Bolsonaro, the far-right presidential candidate, has said that education is a major focus. He says there's a need to expand the curriculum so that more maths, science and Portuguese are taught in schools. On the issue of the economy, the Workers' Party candidate Haddad has vowed to do away with the constitutional amendment which enabled the freezing of public spending for 2 decades. Thousands of voters remember the days when Haddad was education minister. Back then, he opened over 400 technical schools and 18 universities. Now he's promising to strengthen primary level education and improve tertiary level programs.
For my students, who are black students from the poorest sector, they had the opportunity of good public education program, but this opportunity is now at risk. They know that voting for Haddad means voting for the continuity of this education trust, which I believe will help hundreds of people.
Meanwhile, Bolsonaro has failed to present any proposals to improve basic education. He's also said he supports the privatization of public universities and the introduction of distance learning programs. These are measures which the population is divided on.
Who guarantees that those who go to class are really studying? Who guarantees that students get food in their schools? Everything is a mystery. My cousin studied under a distance learning program and now he's a professor.
Teachers replace the parents when they are not at home. In my time, it was like that. I think that it is fundamental that children are in the schools and not learning through a virtual platform.
Out of 50 million students in basic education in Brazil, 80% are in public schools. Experts say they will be the most affected by Bolsonaro's proposals.
The proposals of reducing public funds for education are wrong. Bolsonaro represents a serious threat to the right of our children to have a bright future. His program actually says that the state is not responsible to guarantee basic education for lower-income children.
This Sunday, when 147 million voters choose their next president, their decision will have an impact well beyond the 4 years of the presidential term. It will affect the future of a whole generation, schooled on the basis of the educational proposals of one of these candidates.
A trial date has been set for a former Barbadian government minister accused of money laundering. The former head of commerce, Donville Innes, is now scheduled to appear before a U.S. federal court on June 24th of next year. The prosecutor alleges that Innes used his position to accept bribes to help an insurance company secure 2 Barbadian government contracts. He could face up to 20 years in jail. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute. Welcome back. The migrant caravan continues on its long trek towards Mexico's northern border. On Wednesday, the main body of the caravan set off towards Mazatepec in the state of Chiapas.
To avoid the extreme heat, migrants in the caravan resumed their journey early in the morning. At about 3:30 in the morning, the group filled up one lane of the Pan American Highway that will take them from village to village until the town of Arriaga. Some of them are already tried to reach the border with the United States before.
It's been a long time since I have been in El Salvador. I was deported from the United States and I decided to migrate again with all these people in the caravan.
People get more tired as the days pass by. They haven't slept and they eat whatever people give them in solidarity.
I give them tacos or whatever I have at home. It is food from my shop. It is the only thing I have to help them out.
People in the caravan face a lot of risks, but they keep moving forward.
It was very hard to pass through Guatemala because I almost got raped. A guy who passed by protected my friend and I with a knife. My friend went back to Honduras because she was really scared.
The Mexican Secretariat of Domestic Affairs says 110 Honduran citizens resigned to their asylum application and have asked to be taken to their home country.
And more migrants are trying to cross into Mexico to join the caravan. We go to our correspondent, Pablo Perez, who is on the Guatemalan side of the border.
They have walked over 300 miles and they still have energy to play an impromptu match of soccer here at Tecunumán Central Park. This is the last city in Guatemala they're going to be in until they reach Mexican soil. This step has been a little difficult the last few days because Mexican authorities have closed the gate to the migrants and only letting them in very small numbers. The day after yesterday, the day before yesterday, they admitted only 44 of them. So this one here that had been coming to Tecunumán in small numbers during all of the night are waiting for a big group that is coming from Guatemala City to see if their numbers, if they can reach over 400, 500, like the last time the Mexican government let them in, they can, force the authorities to enact the law, the asylum and refugee law that all Latin American countries have signed for. And they say that they cannot stop the people who are moving internationally for humanitarian reasons. Something that has not been enacted by all the governments lately, mostly they say because of the threats by Donald Trump's government of ending financial aid and even in the Mexican case, sending troops to the border and closing it down.
And some news just in. The U.S. President Donald Trump will order at least 800 United States Army troops to secure the border with Mexico ahead of the arrival of the migrant caravan. The Defense Secretary is expected to sign the papers necessary to send the troops in the coming hours.
We give a lot of money to these countries.
Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has called the U.S. Vice President Mike Pence a crazy extremist over his migrant caravan accusation. Maduro dismissed Pence's claim that the group was financed by Venezuela. He fired back at Pence during a meeting broadcast on state television.
The man said that the caravan was being financed by Venezuela, by President Nicolás Maduro, and that they intend to put the United States' defense and security to the test. I don't know why. I have a tremendous power to summon. Right, in Central America. Mike Pence? If it weren't an extremist saying it, a crazy extremist like Mike Pence, and the danger that this means for my own personal security, who has already been the subject of an open public attack on the security of the country, one would only laugh at this. The first thing it provokes is laughter, and the second is worry, because of the imperialist paranoia has begun by accusing President Maduro and Venezuela of whatever occurs to them.
The third school of decolonial critical thought has been taking place in Venezuela. Academics from several countries came together to discuss the use of the media to criminalize social movements and the people they represent.
The speakers at this forum made clear their stand against colonialism, something they say is still alive and which seeks to assert itself in the form of sexism against peoples who decided to assert their independence from imperialism.
There is an imperial feminism that Fanon described in his book Black Skin, White Masks, a feminism that goes against immigrant women.
According to them, colonial domination should have no place in today's world. They analyze issues like the rise of the right in Brazil, the indifference of international organizations in the face of humanitarian crisis, and the campaign against Venezuela.
Today there is a turning of the screw against Latin America, which is seen in some geopolitical areas as the enemy. Today Venezuela is that enemy which allows the US to return to Latin America. Venezuela is the justification for US imperial actions. But not only against Venezuela. The rise of the right in Brazil and what happened with Lula is not a coincidence.
The participants agreed to defend Venezuelan sovereignty from international interference.
It's obvious that there is a media war where they pretend to smear the struggles in Venezuela and in other Latin America countries.
For this forum, political harassment and economic blockade are the strategies of the international right against the progress of democracy and decolonization that some South American nations are seeking.
The lower house in Uruguay has approved an employment bill for people with disabilities. The bill was passed by the Senate last week. It seeks to include thousands more Uruguayans in the labor market.
After months of discussion in social and political organizations, the employment bill for people with disabilities has been finally approved. It seeks to incorporate people with disabilities into the labor market.
In Uruguay, there are more than 500,000 people with disabilities. 80% of them are unemployed, and 50% live in the poorest households of our country. After analysing these facts, we understand the importance of this bill to give them a helping hand. It isn't charity to these people who are a crucial part of society.
The law says that any private company that has 25 or more permanent employees should reserve a quota of 4% for people with disabilities. But even with the advances in the bill, there are still modifications to be discussed in the next few months.
The next thing is to work on modifications to deal with parents of children with disabilities. This is a very important and fundamental aspect. The effort that parents make to take care of their children with disabilities is huge, and therefore should have a differentiation with regards to the days of license payment in labour and work area.
The trade union movement has recognized the advancement with this new law, but it criticizes some of the changes brought in the bill, especially about the limitation put on the number of applicants.
We didn't have anything for people with disabilities before, and now we have an employment bill for people with disabilities. Some of the things we are asking for have been dropped in the bill, but we will continue fighting for them.
The bill was passed in the House by a large majority. It will now be referred to the President for his approval, after which it will be enforced.
Time for the second break of this newscast. World News is next. Welcome back. The authorities in the United States have now discovered a total of 9 packages of explosive devices were sent to critics of the President Donald Trump. The latest targets were the former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden and the actor Robert De Niro. Both were sent similar envelopes with bubble wrap and computer-printed address labels. The spree started on Monday with a mail bomb sent to the billionaire George Soros, and then additional packages were sent to former President Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the media company CNN. U.S. stock markets are on the recovery path a day after one of the worst falls since 2011. The impact was seen across the world. Asian markets are still down while European markets have bounced back. Growing concerns over the global economy, rising borrowing costs and trade tensions were to blame for Wednesday's plunge. Super Typhoon U2 has devastated the U.S. territories of the Northern Mariana Islands and Guam. Homes were flattened when heavy rains and gale-force winds battered the islands. Within 24 hours, the storm had strengthened into the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane. U2 is now tracking towards the Philippines and Taiwan. The Ethiopian parliament has elected the country's first female president. Before becoming president, Shale Wakzwede worked as the UN representative at the African Union. She has also served as an ambassador in Senegal and Djibouti. Her election comes just a week after the Prime Minister filled half of his cabinet with women as part of his transformative agenda. And now let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
Facebook has been fined $645,000 by the United Kingdom. The UK's Information Commissioner's Office fined the social media company over its involvement in the Cambridge Analytica data scandal. Facebook shared some of the 87 million people's data with Cambridge Analytica it took without permission. The firm used the data for targeted political advertising in the US. South Korean authorities have exhumed the remains of 2 soldiers in the demilitarized zone shared with North Korea as part of the demining operation. Officials estimate the remains of more than 10,000 soldiers are in the DMZ area, including South Korean and UN soldiers. They were killed during the Korean War between 1950 and 1953. The war hasn't officially ended as no peace treaty was signed.
It is of great significance that we have discovered the first remains of a putative South Korean soldier at this point. In the process of preparation for the North and South Joint Recovery Operation as a result of the military agreement. Also, it is assumed that there are more than 10,000 remains in the DMZ area, including the UN forces as well as South Korean soldiers.
The European Parliament has awarded the Sakharov Human Prize to Ukrainian filmmaker Oleg Sentsov, who is currently jailed in Russia over an alleged arson plot in Crimea. The 42-year-old filmmaker received $58,000 prize for an exceptional contribution to human rights around the world. The other runner-ups for the award included 11 charities saving migrants in the Mediterranean and American activists.
And we end with the news that Trinidad and Tobago's Dwayne Bravo has announced his retirement from international cricket. Bravo, who's one of the world's top all-rounders, made his debut for the West Indies 14 years ago. He says he feels that at this point, he should leave the international arena for the next generation of players. However, Bravo's professional cricketing career is not entirely over. The champion will now only play domestic games. That song. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at talisyourtv.net/English. And for our viewers in Africa, remember, we are on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. Everyone can follow us on social media because we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Talis Your English, I'm Sony Gray. Thank you for watching.